Great. Good afternoon. Good morning, I should say. Good morning and happy Earth Day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for this one of many webinars as a part of the Scott Institute webinar series. We continue the series that we started more than a year ago with bringing together thought leadership to talk on particular topics. So I'm going to go through a few slides this morning. First, I just want to give you my contact information. I'm Anna Siefkin. I'm the Executive Director for the Scott Institute, and we are the ones who have pulled together these webinars in partnership with so many of you. So very glad to have you. If we are not connected on LinkedIn, I would welcome that opportunity and want to make sure that you're also following the Scott Institute in other ways. So please sign up for our newsletter. It's our primary way of getting the word out about the programming that we're pulling together. So I want to make sure you're a part of that as well. So the Scott Institute is the research hub at Carnegie Mellon around energy. So we look at strategic partnerships. We have an educational angle, of course, entrepreneurship and innovation, but we're really trying to pull together the entire campus, and today we're talking about campus, around a sustainable, lower carbon energy future. So this webinar series, as I mentioned, we've been doing it since March of 2020. And our goal is to bring together operations, policies, and strategies that help all of us, regardless of where we work, as a part of our sustainable future. So today's topic is very specific around the Sustainable Development Goals. And Alex Henniker, one of our guests, is going to give us a brief overview of the SDGs for those of you who are not aware of how they came together. But they're of particular interest to cities, companies, and campuses. And so that is our focus for this morning. So we have two other webinars planned for the balance of this semester. So one of them is in partnership with C3E, which is a DOE program that has a focus on clean energy education. So we're talking about decarbonizing at scale, and we have Carol Battershell and myself will be working with Valerie Carplus to talk about decarbonizing with scale and urgency. And then in partnership with the National Energy Technology Laboratory, which is located here in Pittsburgh, we're doing one on batteries, fuel cells, and the future of energy storage, which interestingly enough, the PADEP has just released a report with 15 recommendations around energy storage for the Commonwealth. And we will be addressing those with NETL and Jay Whitaker in attendance. So if you have a speaker topic that you would like for us to consider, we do these in a very collaborative way. In fact, the talk today came together because we were thinking about ways to really focus on the SDGs within the campus and with some of our key partners. But all of our webinars have come together in partnership with all of you. I want to say a special thank you today to Covestro. So ordinarily we have multiple partners outside of the university. Today we have quite a few partners inside the university, plus Covestro is joining us with Rebecca Lucore. So with that, I am going to stop sharing here and do a few introductions. Share. Okay. So I'm thinking that all of you are here. So the first person I want to focus on is Rebecca Lucore, and she is the head of sustainability and corporate social responsibility for Covestro LLC. So there we go. Get us in gallery view. So Covestro LLC is, the North American headquarters are here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it's one of the leading producers of high performance polymers with business segments in automotive, construction, wood processing and furniture, electrical and electronics, and healthcare industries. She's responsible for devising new models that apply the company's commitment to sustainable business practices and the UN SDGs to its social programs, philanthropy, community relations, and sustainability initiatives. So welcome, Rebecca. We also have with us Stephen Guenther, who is Carnegie Mellon University's Assistant Vice President of Facilities Management and Campus Services and serves as the university engineer. So Stephen has had 2 tours of duty on campus and serves as co-chair for the Carnegie Mellon University Sustainability Initiatives Council. So in addition to serving the 6 million square feet of our university in a staff role, he's also an alumnus of the Tepper School of Business. Welcome, Stephen. last but not least, we have Alex Henniker, who is the Executive Fellow for Sustainability Initiatives at Carnegie Mellon University. She led the recently completed Voluntary University Review for Carnegie Mellon, which was the first of its kind at a university. So Alex previously oversaw the Sustainable Development Goals program for the city of New York, and her background is in international development with 15 years of experience working with 18 countries around the world, bringing a wealth of knowledge to Carnegie Mellon. So welcome, Alex. So with that, we are going to dive right into our questions. And each of the panelists is going to be answering some of these questions. Not all panelists will answer every question, but this first one, I think, is a really, really important one. So why is it important for your organization to be involved in the SDGs? And how has adopting the Sustainable Development Goals been important to your organization? So I'm going to first start with Rebecca. And then Stephen and Alex, I want you all both to speak to this one as well from the campus perspective. And Alex, I know you're going to lend kind of a voice to how the SDGs came together as a part of this question. So Rebecca, can you tell us about the importance to your organization?
Absolutely. Covestro was really fortunate. For people that don't know, we were part of the Bayer Group and we spun out over 5 years ago. And at the time that we became independent and our own company, it was the same time these goals were being developed. And we had a great opportunity to sign on with the UN Global Compact and be one of the first global adopters to these goals. And it was integral to be integrated right into our business and innovation strategy. So important. So we have one of our non-financial KPIs is to have 80% of our R&D aligned with one or more of the UN goals. And another goal is to become fully circular. And we can only do that by adopting these goals and looking at them. And what's so great about them is their roadmap. They're a phenomenal roadmap. So I personally really like the fact that they integrate social, economic, and environmental. For so long, when we hear the word sustainability and people talk about it, oftentimes we just talk about, energy consumption or greenhouse gas. And it's always so focused on environmental, but you cannot be sustainable without looking at the social and the economics of things as well. Everything is interrelated. So it's been really important to us. And I think goal number 17, partners for the goal, is one of the most important. I see everyone on my fellow panelists nodding their heads. You can't do this alone. We have to work together. And I wanted to share an example of us doing that. So we have very ambitious energy reduction and carbon goals. And one of the organizations we're working with is not someone you would immediately think of for, a chemical or plastics company to work with, and it's the Environmental Defense Fund. The EDF has a phenomenal fellows program we're involved with, where they look for graduate students around the world that are doing cutting edge work in analytics and on the science side and all this great data research. And they place them for a summer with companies like ours to help us look at climate goals. So we've had several students to date that have been phenomenal. Our last one I want to note was from Carnegie Mellon, and he was exceptional, and we enjoyed working with them. But they help us do things like taking an old antiquated data system for measuring energy consumption at our manufacturing sites and making it more like cloud-based and more able to be updated and shared. And it's really been a great, partnership. So I wanted to mention that.
Stephen, over to you.
Yeah, those are excellent, Rebecca. And I think we're going to probably around the square, probably have some chatter around our favorite SDG. And use my story, they're like children. You got to love them all. But as a university engineer, I will tell you, I love some more than others. We'll probably talk through some of that later on, but they are so critically important. And it's so amazing how there are connections between so many of the SDGs. And I'm glad we'll be able to talk about those connections. Even with it being Earth Day, we'll talk about how our efforts in support of the SDGs cover so many of the goals. So why are the SDGs important to Carnegie Mellon, and why did the university want to get involved with the SDGs? Well, we have a long history, but most importantly for the university, we've got a particular commitment to one, educate the next generation, to create new knowledge through research, and to lead by example within our community, both locally and more broadly. So when Carnegie Mellon University established the Sustainability Initiative in September of 2019, we did so with the explicit recognition that at its core, sustainability really, even when it's focused on the environment, is really about equity and inclusion more broadly. That is so important to us and something that we continue to stress over and over again. As a unique contribution that a university can make, it's that we're educating young people, really the next generation, and they're going to carry forward this objective to create a more equitable and sustainable planet over this decade of action. So embracing these global goals now, it's in our mission of education, of research and practice, and it's going to help to ensure that we're preparing not only people locally, but the students that leave our campuses and go on to greater things, that they are ready to help with some of the greatest challenges that we face today. We're going to seek opportunities at a university to strengthen coordination and engagement within the community itself, within locations where we operate, and with other entities like we have here on the panel today that are also committed to achieving the SDGs.
Sure. So Anna, you touched on an important question that comes up a lot, is sort of the origins of the Sustainable Development Goals and their link to the United Nations. Back in 2015, all countries around the world gathered at the UN in New York to agree to these 17 ambitious objectives, which are called the Sustainable Development Goals, or the SDGs. I prefer the global goals because I think it's more inclusive and also just easier to say. And all of the countries agreed to achieve them by 2030. And this followed years of consultation with millions of people around the world. It's the first universal framework that looks at sustainability, not only, as Rebecca mentioned, in terms of the environment, but also in terms of socioeconomic issues. So it includes goals like energy, climate action, and so on, but it also addressing reducing poverty, no hunger, and my favorite, peaceful, just, and strong institutions, because without good governance, none of this can take place. But the important thing is that the agenda was agreed at the United Nations, but it explicitly recognizes the important role that cities, universities, and the private sector have to play. But it stops short of saying just what that is. So when I was at the city of New York, we recognized that cities are at the forefront of implementing about 66% of the goals and had an important role to play both in identifying solutions to these global objectives, but also using this common language to learn how the city of New York and other cities could do better on the range of 17 goals. So like, if we take what we're doing as a city, we take what we're doing as a university, as a private sector, and translate it into these goals, we can better communicate with each other as educators, as researchers, as practitioners on what we're doing and why it matters. Steve mentioned the importance of equity. Equity is at the core of every single goal. You can't achieve any of these goals if anyone is left behind. So not only is there a specific goal addressing reduced inequalities, but it's part of every single other goal. And it's really important to remember that as we talk about how we measure progress and what we consider completion of the objectives.
Thank you for that. I think it's an important part of this overall conversation, this idea of equity, because we know that energy production is not always equitable. It's certainly a goal for all of us. I want to remind everyone that you can ask questions. We're tracking those in the Q&A. I've seen a couple come in already. So if you have questions, please put them in at any point that they occur to you during the session, and we'll get to them towards the end. So Rebecca, did you have another comment before we went to the next question?
Well, someone said, equity, and that's one of my favorite topics. So I wanted to add one more thing. So, I talked about how, we're an innovation and we're a science-based company. And of course, we're always innovating and doing a lot of R&D to see how we can have more sustainable products and processes and technologies. But in doing that, when you talk about the social side of sustainability as well, we're also, a company that employs our our employees into the community to volunteer. And we also, we make donations and we support social programs. But the equity really comes into that picture, because if you look long term, we have put a lot of, in the past and present, we will in the future, a lot of money into education programs. We want future people to be educated and interested in science and innovation, so they can help us do a lot of R&D around these products and processes. But if we're not looking at the social things, the food insecurity and the poverty and the issues like that, we're never going to broaden the pool of people that we're going to pull from to do that. So a simple example is food insecurity is a really alarming issue in this region. A lot of people don't think of that, and a lot of people don't know that, but it is. We can put all the money we want into phenomenal STEM programs in the schools, but if kids are coming to school hungry, or they experience homelessness and they don't make it to school on a regular basis, there's barriers. We're missing a group of students. So I just wanted to make that note again, that you really have to look at the interconnectedness, and you have to look at the social side along with the environmental side as well.
So following along on that, I mean, you're talking about, the interest that you have in the communities that where we are located. And so I would love to understand a little bit more about how you leverage some of your expertise, kind of from the corporate side, and Stephen on the procurement side. How do you leverage that to actually get at the goals, particularly since we're talking about it around equity? How do we use the goals and what we're doing within our organizations and our expertise to actually get there? So Rebecca, what are some strategies that you all are using? You mentioned a few already. I just want to.
Yeah. We really look at it, I think of it kind of three-pronged. There's action on the ground. So those are the things I kind of alluded to. Corporations have resources, not just monetary resources. We have people resources. We have technical expertise resources. So we have spent a lot of time on something we called skills-based volunteerism. We also do traditional volunteerism that could be going to clean up, the riverbanks, or helping paint schools and packing boxes of foods. But what we're really focused now is on the skills-based volunteerism, where we implore our employees to go out and work up to 3 to 4 months with specific NGOs and help them capacity build. We help them tackle issues that they don't have the resources and knowledge and expertise to tackle. And in doing that, we're helping to make them stronger organizations. And then the organizations can fulfill their missions, which ultimately align with, one of the UN goals. So that's really important. The other thing is providing thought leadership. Most of you know that we've been very involved with since 2017 with our Think 30 summits. And this really was an opportunity to introduce the UN goals to the region. This is our headquarters region. It was important to us at a time where they really weren't known yet, and to talk about the great work that's going on around the goals, but also some of the challenges that we still need to tackle. And that's another example of what companies can do. And then the third is just leadership by example. And these are simple things by having goals. Being transparent, communicating about the goals, talking about the action and the progress on your goals, and sharing, business cases and best case examples with other companies and helping them along their sustainability journey.
Yeah, Anna, the partnerships are so critical, and I love that Rebecca included Goal 17 and partnerships for the goals as one of her favorites, and it is so critical. I've got a story about an example from Carnegie Mellon I think ties in to this question about leveraging expertise and partnerships. But Carnegie Mellon, as many people know, is a tier 1 research institution, but we're more than that. We were founded as a trade school, and rolling up our sleeves and putting new knowledge to work, that's really part of the DNA for this campus. So we partner with corporate America across all industries, across all of our colleges and all of our schools. And as an institution of higher education, we've got the ability to apply our research and our creativity towards creating solutions that really can get to work on multiple fronts. So the example that I want to talk about is our Manufacturing Futures Initiative down at Mill 19. It's on the leading edge of what we're calling Industry 4.0, the next industrial revolution. And it applies innovations to the manufacturing technologies But in the spirit of the SDGs, it also applies to the workforce. It incorporates workforce development. That's going to be such a critical part of catalyzing needed economic development, not just making sure that the manufacturing technology is there, but the workforce is prepared to be able to support that and move it forward. It's all part of, I think, the equity in innovation, applying it to the SDGs. Not only that, but part of this story, we're doing that work in a building at Hazelwood Greens, Mill 19, and down at Mill 19, what was once a rusty old steel mill, it structurally supports now the country's largest single slope solar array. So it's a physical metaphor and a model for our region's innovative and cleaner future. If you want to see how much power is being generated out of that single slope array at Hazelwood Green, you can anytime online, pull it up and take a look. And it also shows you a picture of that building that's creating Industry 4.0. So we've partnered with corporations to achieve breakthrough in many levels. We've also done it in terms of power procurement for more than 20 years. So in 2001, the university won the first EPA Green Power Leadership Award. We made the largest retail wind power purchase ever at that time. Pretty impressive statement, but it was 5% of our energy load. And at that point, 20 years ago, that was huge. It was big for the time. Today, we cover 105%. So that amount plus another 100% of our load more. And we're buying physical renewable energy made within PJM. So supporting what's happening here locally within our grid. None of those achievements that we had for power procurement would have been possible without leveraging expertise in the industry and partnerships with corporations that were making huge investments in infrastructure in the country.
Yeah, and I'd also add, I mean, one of the most appealing reasons from coming from the city of New York to Carnegie Mellon University is that CMU both implements programs, as Steve mentioned, but there's also the education and research aspects. And one thing, the very first thing that we did at CMU is we conducted an assessment of what we were doing in terms of education, research, and practice. And as Anna knows, the vast majority of our research actually focused on Goal 7, clean energy. But of course, the research doesn't just focus on energy, it focuses on a range of initiatives. And I'm thinking about Dr. Destiny Knock, who does incredible work looking at how it's so important for energy to be equitable. And I know that she also teaches that in her courses. And identifying research and education like that can help inform discussions both internally at CMU, but also externally with our regional partners and our global partners is really a major benefit of engaging with the Sustainable Development Goals.
So Alex, you actually started into one of the next questions that I wanted to ask, which was about what are some short-term and sort of longer-term projects that we're working on, either I would say in Pittsburgh or on campus, and some of the technologies that are needed. I think, Stephen, you could probably add in, are we doing things with help from these partners? Like what kind of help? And are there policies that are helping us do this better?
I'll let Alex start off and then I'll layer in some pieces. She had some great comments. I'd love to hear more.
Yes, Alex.
Sure. If you were talking about, I think in terms of partnerships and how we're using the Sustainable Development Goals as CMU, we have our internal sustainability initiative that we've talked about a little bit. But in terms of cities, the city of Pittsburgh is also committed to the Sustainable Development Goals and conducted their own review of what they're doing. We're part of a regional effort led by the Sustainable Pittsburgh that incorporates the Allegheny County region, looking at how local NGOs as well as the city and other local authorities are employing the Sustainable Development Goals to take what we're doing here and better incorporate it in regional efforts. Another example is just yesterday, the Green Building Alliance announced a huge grant that CMU is part of that is related to the United Nations Center of Excellence. So here in Pittsburgh, we're a hub not only to share locally what we're doing, but also to be part of global conversations. And CMU, in terms of education, research, and practice, has such an important role to play in that.
Yeah, and I'll add in an immediate, very short-term goal as we're looking, hopefully, to move into the next and late phases of the pandemic, It's really about educating people and how we can hopefully be able to cement a few of the silver linings out of this very troubling time and bring those forward. So we think changing behaviors in folks, helping them make smarter choices really can come from changes in perceptions. The most valuable incentives going forward in the short term may not be subsidies or rebates, but it may be recognizing some intrinsic values. And so in the immediate short term, I think the key to the next wave of decarbonization is how we return from COVID. What we're working on campus right now are guides for members of our campus community that are preparing to return to campus over the summer in preparation for the fall. And it's a chance to restart and to rethink, because actions, small actions across thousands and hundreds of thousands of people nationwide can really make an impactful difference in how we come back as a country and a nation. So do we just pick up where we left off and go back to business as usual? Do we enter into the roaring 2020s and have a period of unbridled expansion, uncontrolled? Or do we carry forward, as I said, a few silver linings from the pandemic experience? Our hope is that we can choose that third choice, that we can educate people, that we've taken this time to learn something, and we certainly want to make sure that we bring those forward. One example from on campus related to energy and reducing our energy impact, we implemented a whole new level of HVAC enhancements and basic building controls to address the airborne risks of COVID, but also to improve indoor air quality for people as they come back. It's just one example of how we can hold on to some small sustainability gains for the next year as we apply those technologies to further reduce our energy utilization index in the next academic year. On the long-term side, we're putting our final touches on an infrastructure plan for the campus to support resiliency and sustainability in conjunction with our institutional master plan. So since 2005, we've lowered our greenhouse gas emissions by 76% in aggregate, but we're not done. We're not finished, and we believe there's so much more to do. So beyond our commitment to green buildings, renewable power, and district energy, we've got some plans for some hidden transformations that'll happen underground, behind walls, in infrastructure, but we're also linking back, hoping to change behaviors and perceptions of the people that are using those spaces in the classrooms and in the laboratories to be able to help to advance some of the, we think, small positive things as part of a gloomy overall time.
So I'd like to just real
yeah,
quick.
Rebecca, I was going to pass it to you and see what's happening in terms of pandemic sort of.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just to reiterate what Stephen said, which is really good. This is an opportunity. There were some silver linings in the pandemic, and our company, like every company out there, like academic institutions, we had a shutdown for a year, and a lot of us had parts of our organizations up and running, but for the most part we had a lot of people not commuting to work, not traveling anymore, not attending meetings, and working from their homes. So energy utilization on our campuses and our campuses and everything, it was so different. It's one of those teachable moments that we have to take advantage of. We have to look at things. We have to reevaluate how we work. What will things look like now? How can we do things differently? Look at the energy reduction and the cost savings and everything that we saw through this time. How can we replicate that, but at the same time still move forward? I mean, I think we all remember the images when we were in full shutdown mode, where we weren't at the beginning really leaving our homes or doing anything. Every morning they would have a new image on the national news, like the Golden Gate Bridge with herds of animals moving across them, because there's no cars and there's no commuters. And so it was one of those moments, I think, that that teaches us to stop and pause and think about what could be and how we can continue to carry these patterns forward.
So with that, I'm actually going to insert one of the questions that came in, because you mentioned this idea of working differently. And so Amy Curtright has asked the question about, she's calling it the elephant in the room, is about how we're going to handle air travel. So, how can we leverage what we've learned in COVID to make better choices in terms of travel in the post-COVID world? So I can imagine part of it is going to involve Zoom, but I have to tell you, I am looking forward to being able to get out and about a little bit more than just seeing you in these little boxes. How are we going to handle that? And how are we thinking through that as organizations? Who wants to start with that one? It's a tough one.
It's a tough one on a number of levels. I'll talk from a university perspective. Before the pandemic, I actually had a student project class looking to try to quantify what travel looks like for a university. And in a decentralized organization that doesn't push all travel reservations through a central reservation system, it turns out to be a lot more complicated than I anticipated. When I was in the corporate world, there were requirements to follow policy related to arranging travel. And so it was very controlled. But in a university setting, we have students that are traveling to campus from overseas. We have students that are involved in a semester abroad. We have researchers that are invited and sponsored to go to conferences and to speak on panels. And then we just have travel that happens in the nature of day-to-day business, the local commuting that happens, as well as travel between all the Carnegie Mellon campuses that are here in the US and abroad. It turns out to be complicated, one, to measure it. And we all know you can't manage something if you can't measure. But we do know that the measurement of the last year has fallen drastically. And part of what the university administration is looking at is how to make sure that when travel happens, it's really necessary and it's going to add. In the last 12 months, it's been really focused on from a personal safety perspective. But the university is also looking at travel as it falls as part of the university's carbon footprint, knowing that that is a major source that we're still looking to pin down. On the very, very local term, what I'm most interested in is how can Carnegie Mellon has robust use of public transportation, but many people are no longer comfortable. And so the behaviors that have grown over the last 5 to 10 years of increased use of public transportation by staff that have no other option or students that use it as a convenience to get to community. How do we reinstill the perceptions of safety and benefits of using public transportation in lieu of other forms of transportation? Because we think the interaction is critically important, and we don't want people to feel like they need to stay home because things aren't safer than they really are. But travel is a big part, and it doesn't mean traveling by plane across the country. It could mean hopping on the 61C and just going halfway across town.
So Alex, I know there's a question that's come in for you on the VUR, but I'm going to have Rebecca answer that question about travel for Covestro. I mean, how are you all thinking about it? You're an international company located here, but people are going all over for business.
Absolutely. We've always, pre-pandemic, like you mentioned, we're a global company. We have customers all over the world. We also, tend to meet in various locations with colleagues from specific functions, et cetera. Stephen mentioned something about looking at controls. And of course, as a corporation, we've always had those in place: cost controls, safety controls, looking at travel. But I think pre-pandemic, there were a lot of meetings, a lot of instances where we thought, oh, we have to be in person, we have to be together to discuss this. And there's something about, being physically together in the room. And I think if anything, we learned that is not the case for a lot of things, because as time marches on, work is getting done. The company is still open. We're still moving forward. We're still making products. We're still, doing research and selling products. And I think it's taught us that we need to reevaluate. And I think that will be a big part of when you look at, our carbon footprint and other things moving forward, how we work and how we travel is going to be very important.
Thank you, Rebecca. So the question that's come in from Ed Rubin, Ed, thank you for this question, I'll read it how you've written it. Education and research on sustainability is of course critical and appropriate for a major university. But what specific metrics and targets has CMU established to measure and track our own progress towards each of the SDGs? So where are we now and where do we hope to be by 2030? This is a tall order, a great question. So I think we can probably answer all of it. All of us have a piece of that, but I want to start with Alex.
Sure. And first, I want to thank Professor Rubin because his work and the work of his students was foundational for the Voluntary University Review. Quickly, what a voluntary review is, so all countries are invited to submit a voluntary national review of how they're doing on the range of the goals. When I was working for the city of New York, I created the concept of a voluntary local review for cities to report and share their progress on the 17 goals. And one of the main reasons I came to CMU was to work on the Voluntary University Review, the first such report in the world looking at CMU's progress on these goals. The challenge, of course, is that CMU is wonderfully decentralized and there is no central place that includes the information for all these different metrics that are addressed in the goals. Professor Rubin's course has identified a lot of the environmental goals, but we also, through the Sustainability Initiative, want to look at what's happening in terms of the socioeconomic goals, like our employment practices, like the Confronting Racism memo that our president put out last summer. There are a lot of things that are already happening on campus, and before we start setting new metrics and new targets, we needed to have that centralized resource to figure out just where we were and just what people are doing. And one of the many benefits of the goals is that it connects different disparate parts of the university that maybe were doing similar or complementary work, but didn't know about it. So in our first sort of round or iteration of this, we're simply looking at what targets and metrics already exist, so we have a better understanding of where we need to go and what metrics we need to set.
Any other comments about that, Stephen?
So I think Alex touched on the important thing that the VUR has done for us is it's really helped us to look at all corners of the university and bring people together that happen to be working on in the same areas and have deep passion, but may not have been connected before. So we have a lot of commitments that have been made at the individual and down at the department and course level. And looking to pull those together at university level, where can we make bold commitments going forward that match our place and our role in terms of both educating the students, but also setting an example for the local community that we serve here on campus and beyond. So the next phases of the sustainability initiative are going to include proposing those ambitious goals for the university. And we look forward to that exciting future.
Thank you, Stephen. So I have another question that's come in. And it's interesting, it talks about cost effective, because I know we all have a different, the SDGs helps us to see a different definition of cost. So I'd love to hear your responses to this. But how do you find the most cost-effective portfolio of sustainability projects? So basically, how do you make decisions between those? And I think that actually speaks to to Ed's question as well. So how do you make those decisions within your part of the organization? By the way, I've launched a poll. So those of you who are listening in, please do respond to the poll. We love to get your feedback. If you have a question, make sure that you put it in the Q&A, and we have time for maybe one more before I ask all of you for your big insight. Like, what's the one thing you want us to remember as we leave today?
I'll answer that question first, and I'll answer it from my point of view within the facilities organization. And that has to do with looking at the maintaining the physical campus environment, which is an area we can certainly have an impact from an environmental stewardship perspective on the campus and advancing some of the goals that we have. And the way we look at it isn't just strictly on a basis of cost. We know that looking at the financial implications, both the cost and the benefits, is important. But we also tried to look at, more importantly, how those dollars can best support the mission of the university. So how do they help to support the research that's happening on campus? Or it may be, how does it create a better learning experience for both students and instructors within the classroom? Or it may be, how do we create the right places for people to interact on campus? And so when we're looking at projects, we've thrown aside, or at least put as one of the inputs, looking at a simple return on investment or a life cycle analysis for projects as one of the considerations. But we bring a committee of people together to help make those decisions so that we have inputs from multiple vantage points on campus that can really help to articulate other values beyond financial benefits or energy reduction that come to play with putting limited resources to support the 6 million square foot of built space on campus, but looking at how we can get the best benefits over the long term from them.
And I would say for Covestro and most corporations, ditto to what Stephen said, same processes, same things we look at. And this is why the UN goals, these global goals are so important, and they're a great roadmap because again, they're all encompassing. Not to sound like sustainability, 101 class, but the people, planet, profit. We never make a decision that benefits one if it's an expense to the other category. So all three are equally weighed and looked at. And again, you can't benefit one or two at a severe expense to the other. They all have to balance out. And that's just a basic equation, but it works and it's so important.
So before I get to that final question, we do have a great question that's just come in. And it's from Valissa Lee. It says, how do you view the role of state or federal policy in your ability to set strong sustainability goals or take action towards achieving the goals? So what is the role of, outside of us? I mean, we're all in a region, but there are other players in this as well. How are they helping us or maybe not helping us?
So I'll give two examples on that. First, our hope on the campus is we're leading by example. So we're always striving to be +1. I think what's happening, and actually I have a lovely tweet from Greta that is on my wall when President Biden recommitted to the Paris Agreement, saying welcome back to the Pittsburgh Agreement, because Pittsburgh committed to that well before the federal government, and the university committed to that back even before. So we're excited to hopefully lead, and we see support from federal or state policy as a way to hopefully underpin the commitment. But we have a goal to always be, I think, +1 on those elements. One area that I'll talk about, talking back to the equity where we continue to work, we're working right now with a number of organizations and lobbying for basic changes in the Allegheny County Plumbing Code to help us to advance all gender restrooms on campus, which really aren't possible under the current basic plumbing regulations. So I'm sure everybody else on this call, the restrooms in your own home are all open to everyone at any time. We don't have the same benefit in some of our historic buildings or even some of the newer buildings. It's challenging to create those spaces just because of some of the ways the code is written. So working with an opening dialogue with the local government can really help to get over some barriers and there are some places where we can't solve problems alone.
I know we're coming to time, Anna. I see you getting antsy, but I think going back to that point about education, my former colleague, Mark Chambers, who oversaw New York City sustainability efforts, was recently appointed as a senior climate advisor for President Biden. So he's taken what he's learned from CMU, from his time in the city, looking at equitable and fair sustainable policies. And he's now part of the Biden administration setting these policies for the country. I'd also add that the state of Hawaii and many cities across the country are actively engaging these goals and hoping that our federal administration will also take them up and be part of the conversation.
Thank you. I'm not antsy. I think we could keep talking though. I tell you.
Oh, okay.
There's just so much to cover. We've got questions that are still coming in, and I'm sorry we're not going to be able to get to them. I really want to ask for each of you to sort of give us a little send off here. It's Earth Day. We've been in this sort of on hold status, and we're about to go back out into the world and really embrace. How can we embrace the sustainable development goals, or the global goals, as Alex is calling them? And what are some things that we should do? What's the impact that we can have? What's your big idea for us? Rebecca, you can start.
I see an opportunity. I saw something, it's funny, I saw something, I wrote it down because I've never heard of it and I didn't want to reference it incorrectly. I saw something on a news segment this morning that we are now in the Yolo economy, which means, you only live once. And that was something new to me, but that's the concept that the last year people have, sat at home, they're doing their jobs differently, they're not going anywhere, and they're feeling stuck, or they're feeling like this is, there's more to life. This isn't inspiring me anymore. And it's about finding what your passion and purpose is, and making a movement to go do that and create change. And so imagine that, what an opportunity. We have generations of people that have globally all experienced this and are kind of in that mindset of what's next, what can I do? I have a passion for this, how can this help people? And I think it's an opportunity, and I think we need to capitalize on it, and we need to get more people to engage to live out their passion, and that can only help the UN goals.
Excellent. Alex or Stephen? Stephen, how about you? And okay.
So we're still early in the decade of action. And we're so excited to continue building awareness. We've had literally hundreds of students, faculty, and staff involved in the sustainability initiative on campus that was launched in 2019. Moving to a virtual environment created some challenges for us, like it did with so many other things. And we're excited, as people come back to campus, to be able to bring them together in the new steps forward against the sustainability initiative, and to achieve the goals by 2030. We still have more than half of that decade left in front of us. And we've got a whole new class of next year's sophomores who will be on campus really for the first time, and a whole group of freshmen that will be here for the first time. And we're excited to welcome them back with messaging that's tying the university's mission to the SDGs.
And I'd add to Rebecca's point about this being an opportunity. The goals are an opportunity, not an obligation for us to do better. And I think it's really important to understand that you don't have to memorize every single one of the 17 goals and 169 targets. What is important to understand is that all of these different efforts are complementary, and whatever your passion point is, there's a part of the global goals that it is relevant to. And using this framework, you can see, at CMU, we have the School of Drama. Cultural heritage is part of the Sustainable Development Goals. How can plays and music and things like that contribute to our sustainability efforts? How can efforts to improve mental and physical health contribute to sustainability efforts? It's not just about energy or climate action or any of those other things. So think about what you care about, and then use the goals as a way to help amplify your efforts and identify opportunities to work with other people on what really motivates you.
So I think that's a great way for us to end off. I actually, because it's Earth Day, and because I'm feeling incredibly thankful for the work that we get to do 365 days a year in these spaces, I want to thank each of you for your contributions. I mean, if you think about it, my mind is a little bit blown here. So we have Rebecca, who's been leading this charge at a major global corporation, including the creation of Think 30. We have Stephen, who's been a part of procuring for his entire career, including like the biggest procurement at a university. And then Alex, you're the person who actually started this at the city level and brought it to a university. So I am overjoyed to have spent this hour with you, this 45 minutes. We're trying to keep it nice and succinct, but just wanted to say thank you for the work that you do all year long, that we can all celebrate with everyone on Earth Day. So with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. We certainly appreciate your being with us, and look forward to seeing you on May the 6th when we talk about energy storage and the future that it holds to unlock so many important things with sustainability. So thank you again to our panelists, and have a great rest of your Earth Day. Try to get outside. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.